to the Peaceful Entrepreneur Podcast, where together we're learning how to have peace in the process of everyday business ownership by improving one step at a time how we think and what we do. I'm your host, Amy Stout. Let's talk about changing your mind in business, because if you're a business owner, you've probably experienced changing your mind once or twice about anything from what services you offer to what kind of clients you want to serve to kind of the entire brand of your business. I will be the first to say that I've changed my mind about a zillion times. And the more that I did it, the more shame that I started to feel of like, what are people going to think when I'm changing my mind again? And I felt like every time I changed it, I had to do like a big reveal, an announcement, and it just started to get burdensome. And I am talking to somebody today who has also made quite a few changes and pivots in business. And we are really just tackling this topic of it is okay. It is normal. It is okay. You do not have to feel shame. There is a reason for the change. You grow as a person. You grow in experience. You grow in your passions. Like, we just need to normalize the fact that there isn't a state that we're trying to reach that is just going to be this perfection, that we are constantly going to be ebbing and flowing and changing and being at different stages of business, and that is just part of it. So if you've ever felt shame over changing your mind, or doubt over whether you should do it or shouldn't do it, or anything kind of along those lines, I really hope that this episode will give you some encouragement and give you some peace in knowing that it is okay and it is normal. So let's jump into my episode with Kate. Oh my goodness, I'm so excited to have you here today, Kate. Thank you for joining me on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited about this conversation.
Yes, we met like a month and a half ago. And in that conversation, like our first like intro call, you asked me a question that like sparked the whole transition that I've been going through these last few weeks with my business, which is great. And then since then, you have also made some big changes in your business.
Yes.
So we're here to talk about that today.
Yes, let's do it. It's not my first rodeo, so
not your first rodeo. Yeah. I'm really excited because I think this topic of pivoting in business can be surrounded with shame. It can be surrounded with confusion, not the lack of clarity, but the reality is it's something that everybody goes through. Like, we all change our minds, we all grow, we all like shift in our passions. And so I just want to talk about today that like pivoting is okay and it's normal. And since you have done it multiple times, but also very recently, I'm excited to hear your insight on it.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Go ahead and share a little bit about your journey so people can know where you're coming from and where you're at right now.
Yeah. So, hello, my name is Kate. And first and foremost, I'm a mom of two, and that is the most important role in my life right now is my family and raising my babies. I have a 2.5-year-old and a 13-month-old. And so this honestly, last 2.5 years, becoming a mom was like a big shift in entrepreneurship, life, lots of changes. So we'll talk about that too. But I've been an entrepreneur for 5.5 years. So I was an entrepreneur before I had kids, and then now having kids. And so it's been very different, and it's caused a lot of pivoting and a lot of growth and a lot of change, and some really hard things and some like hard things, but also really good things. So that is like, the foundation, I feel like, for me with the conversation. But I also am the founder of Mom's Day Out Collective, which is something I started actually in the spring of 2022. So it's been around for about 1.5 years now. But we are now like fully diving into expanding it and figuring out how we can create more community and serve more women on their motherhood journeys. I had my first during 2020, and with the pandemic and all of that, just like really felt like I was lacking community. And then when I had my second, I had a community, I had these people around me, and I noticed just what a huge difference it made in my life. And then not just in motherhood, but I have seen what a difference community can make in business. And when you lack community in business and entrepreneurship, because let's be honest, like especially online business, it can get really lonely. And like you're wondering if everyone is thinking about the same thing you're thinking about, or if people are struggling with the same things you are, or if you don't have that community around you, whether it be virtual or in person, it can make things a lot harder. And so I'm just a big fan of community. I've seen the big difference it makes in my life. And so Mom's Day Out is, yes, geared towards moms and, women on their motherhood journey, but the mission and like the bigger picture of it all is just what a difference community makes, I think, in everyone's life, and no matter what season you're in. And so we do, local meetups, we are planning events, we are getting memberships up and going, we're partnering with local businesses and online businesses to also elevate other entrepreneurs and small businesses. And it's really cool. And it's been really just awesome to align my work with where I find the most fulfillment, which is in motherhood. And that was kind of the biggest thing that had shifted for me in like the last year. Really like the last 8 or 9 months, like since the beginning of this year, just feeling like this pull to do something else and to like figure out what that something else was. And through like a lot of reflection and prayer and just a lot of things kind of came down to, you feel the most fulfilled in this role as a mom and in motherhood, and like what can you do in order to serve and share this mission, but also have it be a business to like provide for my family, because at the end of the day, like that's something that's important to me too. So yeah, we've been going through that pivot, and it is, like I mentioned before we started recording, it is so different than any other business I've done. I think right now I'm up to like 3 or 4 businesses that I have done in the last 5.5 years, whether simultaneously or pivoted from one to another. And they've all been online businesses, like pretty strict online businesses. And this is a lot more in person, and it's events based and it's community based. And so there's a lot of learning to be done. I'm also, doing more like speaking and that kind of stuff. And so it's a lot different. And so there's a lot of growth that's happening. A lot of like learning that I'm having to do, but it's also really exciting and really, really, really fun.
That's good. I want to get to that, like the reshaping of your brain and how you're processing and how you're thinking about building. But I want to go backward first, because the business that you had before this one, if I'm not mistaken, is your behind the scenes BFF. Is that the one that you were building before you even had kids?
No. So I actually
had a different one before kids.
Yes. So I actually was in network marketing for 4 years,
and that was
full time.
Okay.
And that was pre-kids. So I started that in 2017, end of 2017, when I was teaching full time. So I'm a former teacher. I have my master's in education. I was teaching in Los Angeles, and at the time I started essentially like a side hustle, right? And it ended up growing to the point where I was able to leave teaching and do it full time. And so I did that full time, and it wasn't until I did it for like 4.5 years. It was December of 2021. So I had my son in December of 2020. So about a year after I had my son is when I started to pivot away from that. And just kind of like realign where my business was at. I no longer felt like aligned to that business. I learned so much from it, and I do not regret a single thing about it. And I say this all the time on my podcast too. Like, I think it taught me so many lessons, and it really gave me a taste of entrepreneurship and like introduced me to online business. like I said, learned so much from it. And I feel like a lot of times things are stepping stones, right? It was like
Mm-hmm.
a kind of a jumping off point for me.
Yeah.
And then it was so this is actually just a blip in time. In December of 2021, I actually decided to try my hand at real estate.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I did real estate for a few months. It was actually the day that I started real estate school, I found out I was pregnant with my second. And I was like, and it was unplanned. It was a surprise. We did want another baby, but we struggled with infertility before my first. And so we actually had like a doctor's appointment to like go see our doctor come January, and didn't expect things to happen as fast as they did. And the day that I started real estate school, a week before my son turned 1, found out I was pregnant. And so it was
Gosh.
kind of this thing of like, okay, I'm gonna like keep going through real estate school, but like I'm not sure how this is gonna look for my life,
Yeah.
moving forward. But I did do like 3 transactions in my first 60 days, which was crazy. It was
Yeah.
also really helpful with the market was really
Yeah.
hot at that point. And then just during that time was actually when I kind of like accidentally fell into being a VA and learning how to be an OBM, doing social media management. And that's when I started Your Behind the Scenes BFF. It was kind of like simultaneously because of people I was helping just kind of on the side.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I decided like, okay, wait, like I can do this while I'm pregnant with a toddler on my hip. I can do this like from my couch, or,
Yeah.
when I have 2 under 2, this feels like it's going to fit my life better. I actually really
Mm-hmm.
enjoyed real estate. It just like I couldn't picture how it was going to fit my life, especially with my husband's schedule and stuff like that. It just wasn't
Mm-hmm.
something that I wanted to try and make fit. I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to find something that fit it better. And so that's when I started Your Behind the Scenes BFF, which um, was first just me providing VA services and OBM services. Um, and then it turned into an agency. And then at one point, we ended up dissolving the agency, and it turned more into like an education
Mm-hmm.
brand where we were teaching women how to build businesses as VAs. And so I still have Your Behind the Scenes BFF. The course is still very much alive and well. We still have our community. I'm still doing some coaching on that side. But yeah, since then we've shifted our focus again to Moms Day Out Collective, which I actually
Yeah.
started at the same time I started Your Behind the Scenes BFF. So we actually
Yeah.
started them at the same time.
Yeah. They've
So
just had different stages of
yeah,
growth and periods of time
yes,
where they're growing.
yeah,
It's so interesting. Okay.
yes.
So let's talk about the concept of pivoting, because you
Hmm.
have kind of described quite a few situations now where
Hmm.
you have pivoted. But what would you say are the things that kind of jump started the process in your brain of like, I
Yeah,
might want to change my mind?
yeah. I feel like each scenario has been different. But I think that like the overall theme has just been like the growth that I've made as a person, or like the
Mm,
change that I've gone through personally.
yeah.
Like I said, like finding out I was pregnant and knowing I'm going to have 2 under 2, it didn't feel like real estate was going to be that thing for me. It didn't feel like it was going to be sustainable or like in alignment with what my goals were and what our family goals were. And so it was kind of like time to make that pivot, time to make that shift into something that was more aligned. Um, and then in the same thing with network marketing, like it was, I had been doing something for several years before I was a mom. And then once I became a mom, it was like, okay, like my definition of success changed a lot when I became a mom.
Mm,
And my definition, like my goals changed. What motivated me previously no longer motivated me.
mm,
And so a lot of that changed once I became a mom and just like in motherhood. And I think that can happen at any time. I don't think it takes
mm-hmm,
like having kids to have that realization, but for me, that's when it happened. And so I knew that like I needed to do something different.
mm-hmm.
Um, and then now this most recent pivot, it's been a lot of, I think it's just been like like I said, like everything being a stepping stone, everything has got me closer to where I'm at now. And I'm Christian. And so a lot of mine has to do with my faith and just like feeling like, I've talked about this before, but I kind of felt like every time I made a pivot, every time I made a change, it was like God was saying like, okay, you're closer, but you're not there yet. And like, you're closer to what I'm calling you to do, but like, you're not quite there. But each time it's gotten me closer. And this last year, I really struggled in the beginning of the year with my mental health postpartum. And I really started to get away from like, what was the true reason I like became an entrepreneur? Why do I have a business in the first place? There were times where I felt like I wanted to quit, like I wanted to just go back to teaching or go get a 9 to 5 because I felt like it would be like quote unquote easier. And I really, really struggled with that. And then I actually was diagnosed with ADHD in the spring, and maybe that has something to do with me changing my mind so much, but through a lot of reflection, I'm like, okay, that makes sense. But having that diagnosis and just validation of like, this is why your brain is wired the way that it's wired, and this is why sometimes it's hard for me to turn it off. And like, wanting that 9 to 5 or wanting that other job, I'm like, okay, if I just like had that, then I could just like turn my brain off and I could just like clock in and out. And like, that would be so much easier than like thinking about it all the time. But that's not the reality of like how my brain works. Like I would do that. And then I'd probably like start a side business because I would want to be doing something else.
Yeah.
And so I think just having like that validation, and then, really diving into like therapy and mental health and like taking true care of myself and like spending a lot more time listening and being quiet and resting kind of like opened up more questions that I had for myself and my life, and asking like, is this actually what I want to do? Is this actually aligned to our family goals, to my goals, to how I want to spend my day? Like, what does my perfect week look like? And so asking all these questions, and also like, is this my greater purpose? Is this my greater mission? Is this like what I'm actually called to do? And so asking these questions and having these hard conversations, with myself in therapy, with my family and friends, really, I started to find that I was searching for fulfillment in all the wrong places. And I think for a long time, I've tried to find fulfillment in a business or in a career or in success, and when I hit that goal or when I hit that number of income, like then I'll be fulfilled and like then I'll have like accomplished the thing. But I built 2 6-figure businesses and still did not feel the sense of fulfillment that I feel right now. And I think it's because I've realized that like my fulfillment really comes from motherhood, and it also comes from God and my faith. And I think that that realization has now helped me see, okay, how can if that's like the source of my fulfillment, I still got to pay my bills. I still got to like provide for my family, and like, and I also want to, like, I also am an entrepreneur. I'm business minded. I want to have things outside of motherhood to work on. And that is really from a place of service. And so that brought me back to Mom's Day Out, because we did it last year. We took a break when I was on maternity leave. And then this year, it was kind of this thing that got pushed to the side because it wasn't something that was making money. It's a lot of work to host events and meetups and plan these things out, especially when you don't know how to do it and you're not like making it a priority. And since it wasn't making an income, I was having, to focus on things that were making an income for my family at the time. But I just kept getting this pull like back to Mom's Day Out Collective. And it was really just something that I was like, okay, like this is something that is so needed. And it is something that I'm so passionate about. And like, yeah, it's not like making money right now, before, even now, as we're building it from the ground up, just like any business. But like, what can I do to ensure that it does? And what can I do to like have it be a business that is really based in community and service and empowering and encouraging other women. But also I'm able to provide for my family, and it's aligned so closely with what I am fulfilled in. And so that's what we've been working on. And we have so many like amazing things that are like right on the surface of being launched and like happening. And I just can't wait to, continue to just see it grow and expand and spread our mission, share our mission everywhere, everyone.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's so incredible. And one of the things that you said is like something that it's probably one of the biggest piece of advice that I would ever give an entrepreneur is just to take time to set back and think and let yourself process. That is probably the best thing that you can do for your business and for yourself as a business owner. And I feel like I didn't practice that at first, because I was just like idea, action, and that's kind of how you have to start to get your feet off, get off the ground and get experience, but that's not how you can sustain.
Yeah. And that's hustle culture, right? Like I know a lot of us are feeling burnt out from hustle culture, and I was like definitely a participant in hustle culture for a long time. And I think the last 2 years, I've really forced myself to slow down and to ask questions and to just like be like, is this really what I want to do? Or is this just like an idea that I want to just like, take action on and like get off the ground? And I actually went to a live event a couple of weeks ago. And the thing that kept popping up for me was that this time I want to do it right versus do it fast. And obviously, I'm also a big proponent of this saying, like, done is better than perfect. But I think that because I don't think perfection is attainable. So, there's just a fine line that you can walk between those two, because being something done right or done well does not mean perfect. It does mean like just putting it out into the world, but it also means like reflecting and taking time to figure out like, is this the service I want to provide? Is this actually the product I want to create? Asking yourself the questions about like the sustainability. And I heard something too that was it was run well, not fast. And that's something that has really stuck with me, especially in this season of my life. And so even the last several months, I'm like, oh, I have this really great idea. I'm like, this is it. Like, this is going to be so awesome. And then I let myself sit with it for a day or two. And I'm like, no, I don't think that's it. I don't think that's it. I don't think I'm there yet, and just like really like thinking about it, journaling about it, reflecting on it, praying about it, whatever it looks like for you. I think is so important. And it's the opposite of hustle culture. You also don't want to overthink it. You don't want to be so stuck in like analysis paralysis, but there is such a strength in being able to plan things out long term, or being able to sit with ideas and actually make sure like it's the way you want to go, because then I think it can help a lot with maybe the shame around pivoting, or maybe the constantly questioning of yourself, if you can just sit with something and give it time to kind of bloom and flourish how it's supposed to.
Yeah, I think that has been my experience, and I'm curious like what your experience has been with once you've switched to that mindset, and how it has affected your business, because I feel like I was just in that hustle mentality for 2 years. I mean, year and a half, 2 years, like a really long time. And like you mentioned, like it started to bring up this shame that every single time I would change my mind or make a new announcement, the shame would get increasingly more of like, are people going to think that, what are people going to think that I'm changing my mind again? Or that I'm launching this new thing again? And I really do feel like I've gotten rid of a lot of that by taking that processing time and sitting on something, because then you change all your mind you don't stop changing your mind, but you just do it internally instead of publicly.
Yeah. And I feel like it gives you a sense of confidence because you've sat with it and you know it's the right decision. I think that shame can come from lack of confidence. So if you're like, okay, I have this idea and like, let's put it out into the world, and you're excited about it, but maybe you're not sure that it's like you're not super confident in the offer. You're not super confident on like all of the steps with it. It can cause yourself to have a lot of that doubt and a lot of that, what will people think, or that kind of stuff. And not always, like sometimes, like you are confident and you know this is the right decision, and you still have the thought of, but what are people going to think? What are people going to say? Should I be changing my mind like this much? And I think that that's also normal, but I think just taking time to sit and process and reflect. And when I say time, like even a couple days, like it doesn't need to be like 6 months you're mulling over the same decision. But I think that it can give you more confidence because it gives you more clarity. And so then, like in your core, this is what I'm going to be working on. And this is like how I'm going to be serving the people in my community. So I think it can help with that. Like I said, like it's all a very fine line, but I definitely have seen such a benefit from slowing down. And honestly, it's just felt like my very first, when I first started thinking like, okay, I think it's time to shift into Mom's Day Out and shift my business and focus on this and focus on like a different type of content and that kind of stuff. I actually asked my husband, I was like, can you just like pray a prayer over me that is like, God will just make it obvious. Like, I just need it to be obvious. I just need someone to tell me this is the right decision. Like, because I feel like it's the right decision, but I feel like I just need to know, because I don't want to put time and energy into this if it's not. And I don't want to like lack any sort of clarity. And honestly, like over several weeks after that, it was like one thing after another of like being obvious. And there was even a point where I was talking to my husband and I was like, I feel like it's so obvious that I'm like questioning it. Like, I'm like, but did you actually mean that, or is that a coincidence? Like, what is that? And it's kind of that thing where it's like when you buy a car or you want to buy a car and now you see that car everywhere. And so it was like, I was thinking about it and then like all these things were just coming up and then I just decided like, this is not a coincidence. It's obvious that this is what I'm supposed to do, where I'm supposed to be. And once I made that decision, a sense of peace and just, I don't know, just like I just felt settled. And like, okay, it's sometimes not even the decision itself. It's the act of actually making a decision. I'm like, I just want to make a decision. Am I doing this? Am I not doing this? And sometimes that can be really hard. And sometimes it's not about like what the actual answer is. It's just actually making that decision. And since then, I feel like just I've met people that I'm like now connecting with that aligns with the mission and aligns with, I'm able to help them and they're able to help me. And it's like this sense of community. And then, a door will open to an opportunity that I maybe not have even noticed before. Like the door might have opened, but I would have missed it, and ever since then, it's like, it's just been about waiting, like not forcing anything. Kind of just waiting, working on like lots of stuff behind the scenes that we know are going to be things that we want to do. But in terms of like, okay, like what's the next step? Which one should we do first? Like that kind of thing. It's a lot of like listening to what people need and seeing what people are asking about and having conversations with people that is really driving the way that the business is going, versus how I've built some businesses in the past where it's been, okay, what offer do I want to put out into the world? I still want to help people, but like, this is the offer I want to put out. And then it's like, but is that actually the offer that someone needs? Is that actually like the content they want to see? And so I think for me, one thing I've been really telling myself over the last couple months is like, it's not about me. My business is not about me. It is about the people I'm going to serve. And I will be the first to admit that there have been times where my business, especially before kids, my business was about me. It was about like the goals on my vision board were things that I wanted to accomplish. And while I still had like this heart of like, no, but I like want to help people and I want to encourage them and all this stuff, like that can be true. But it can also be true that your business can become more about you and your goals, and that can send you down a whole different spiral versus when you realize that your business isn't about you. It's like this sense of freedom where it's like you don't need affirmation from other people about yourself or like what you're doing, because you know it's not about you. It's about like how you're serving other people. If someone says something negatively, like, oh, why is she changing her mind again? Or oh, like, which I have not experienced, shockingly, even with all my change, at least not to my face.
Yeah.
But it those like roll off your back a little bit easier because it's not about you. Like, and it's just when you realize and you truly believe that your business, your mission, your purpose is not about you and it's about the people you're going to serve, I think you show up better. Because for me, I'm like, what, you know, if I'm hiding or sitting on an idea for too long, or not wanting to share something because I'm afraid of whatever, or not pivoting because I'm afraid of what people will think, or I'm afraid of that shame, I am now not only holding myself back, but I'm holding other people back from getting what they need, or I'm holding them back from seeing that they can make the pivot or they can make the change. And like, that's selfish. And when I realized it's not about me, it's about like what I can show people, how I can encourage others, and just stop hiding so that other people can step into like whatever their thing is and whatever their greatness is, and however we're going to help people through Moms Day Out Collective. I think that it just, everything becomes a lot easier. A lot easier.
Yeah,
Still
shifting
hard.
where
It's
you
still
find
entrepreneurship, but
yeah, I mean, it's never a easy road, but
no.
shifting where you find your confidence is so huge to that shame piece. And I think like the spiritual part of it too, like confidence in that, like God has given you this calling and this idea for a reason, and the confidence comes from no, this is what he wants me to do. And so the other
I'm like,
stuff
this isn't,
just rolls
I
off.
can't, I'm like, I can't even tell you, like, actually my husband asked me this. He's used to me changing my mind. I swear though, the worst thing I can say to my husband is I have an idea. He just like shakes in his boot. And he asked me, he said, you know, what makes this time different? Because it's been several times. And he says, you know, what makes this time different? And I don't blame him for asking that question at all. I think that's a question I had to ask myself too. And I told him, I said, I can't even give you a reason. I can't even tell you like what makes this time different, other than the fact that like it's not even like my idea. Like it's not even like my what is the word? Like it's not even, it's what God is calling me to do. And like it's me walking in obedience to that calling and seeing like, okay, like what are you going to use me for? And that though is what makes it different, because before it was, you know, what did I want to do? And I love Mom's Day Out, of course I want to do it, but it was driven from a place of making decisions solely based on like business decisions or what I was wanting to put out into the world, versus what I feel like God is calling me to do, how he's wanting me to serve through essentially like ministry, and what like my greater purpose is. And so when he asked me that question, I was like, I don't know how else to give you like reassurance that like this is the last time that I'll pivot, because likely it's not. But all I can tell you is like it's not about me. Like at the end of the day, like this pivot feels so different because it's not about me, and it is about this higher calling and this higher like purpose. And I don't know what it's going to end up being, and I have, you know, I have ideas and goals that I would like it to be, and that I feel like is really aligned to like the mission. But at the end of the day, like he is the only one. He's already had it all figured out. He already
Yeah.
knows like what it's going to do.
Yeah.
And I'm just walking toward that and
I love that.
seeing what happens,
I
essentially.
love that. And that even brings it back to the processing piece, because
Yeah,
I am a very like gut person, but that's
me
also
too.
tied so much to the Holy Spirit and
Mhm.
discernment. And I
Yes.
feel like if we are just making snap decisions and immediately acting, we're not leaving any room to listen to the Holy
Yeah,
Spirit.
agreed.
And that's why we find more clarity the longer we sit on something, because it
Yeah.
gives him the opportunity to place those little things that are like
Hmm.
confirmations, or the opposite.
Yeah.
Because I had a situation where I saw this event, it seemed perfect, it seemed exactly aligned, and then the more I sat with it and the more I learned about it, I was like, oh wait,
Hmm.
maybe no, that's not me.
Hmm.
And to think I could have just signed up for it, and
Yeah.
then what?
Yeah.
So
And
it's
I
so
think
important.
it is. And I think it's so hard too, because sometimes you won't get that confirmation. Like
Right.
sometimes you won't get the sign. You won't get the things that make it obvious. But
Yeah.
it is like it's that gut feeling. I think deep down we all know. And also knowing that like the right decision right now, it could be the right decision, but in a
Hmm.
year from now, maybe you're changing it. And
Yeah.
again, it's all stepping stones, it's all getting you closer. I'm curious, what's your Enneagram?
One.
Okay. Do you have a nine wing or a two
No, I
wing
think I'm a
or
two
both?
wing.
Okay.
Yeah. The
Yeah, I was
idealist
curious.
feels really
Yeah.
like that's me.
Yeah, I'm a nine, so I'm a
Okay.
peacemaker.
Yeah.
And nines, I don't know a ton about the Enneagram, but I know that there's certain types that rely very strongly on their gut. And
Hmm.
nines, because I know I'm a nine, nines
Hmm.
are like gut instinct types.
Yeah.
Um, and even to the point where my husband is like, if your gut says to do something or not do something, like we listen to it. Like, because
Yeah.
it's been, I can't even tell you a time where it's been wrong.
Yeah.
And like you said, I think it's less about like my gut and more about like this discernment and
Hmm.
um the conversation that
Hmm.
I'm having with the Holy Spirit. And that's why this time feels so different, because I have taken a lot of time this year to slow down, to take that time
Mm.
and to not make, very snap one-off decisions.
Yeah.
Um, and I think a lot of people could benefit from that. But I also don't regret like, the stuff in the past, because that's all gotten me exactly where I'm supposed to be.
That's how I feel too. Like, I know
Yeah.
it's cliche. People are like, I don't say no regrets. I kind of do. Like, I'm like,
Yeah.
everything has gotten me to this point, and I see how it all weaves together.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's okay. It's
Yeah.
okay. I think that's the biggest thing that I'm kind of thinking overarching with this is just the
Yeah.
permission piece
Permission.
of
Hmm.
like, it's okay to change your mind.
It is so okay. And you don't need permission, but if you're listening to this and you feel like you need permission, I will give you permission
Yeah,
that
you got
you
two
can
people giving you permission.
absolutely, yes, you can absolutely change your mind, because it does not make sense
Yeah.
that we're supposed to figure it all out when we're 18 years old. Like our brains aren't even
Mhm.
fully developed by then. And we're like, oh, okay, we got to make the decision on what we're going to do the
Yeah.
rest of our life. Like that doesn't make sense.
Mm-mm.
And I'm such a different person than I was at, I'm 29, I'll be 30 next month. And I'm like, I'm such a different person than I was at 19 or 23 or
Gosh.
26
Yeah.
or 28. Like I'm a different person than I was a year ago. I was
Yeah.
just having a conversation with my mom today, and we were talking about like random things, and I was on a walk and I had her on the phone, and we were talking about things. She's like, I feel like you've done like a 180 on like several things that you used to believe or even used to like preach about,
Mm.
or like be bought into, and now I just like don't believe those things anymore. And I
Hmm.
think that not only do we need to give ourselves permission for that, but we need to give other people permission to change,
Yeah.
and like
Hmm.
other people a chance to make decisions and have opinions about things based on the information they have at the time, based on experiences.
Hmm.
Because I am so different than I was a couple years ago when I started,
Hmm.
in business.
Hmm.
Um, and you do not need permission, but I hope that like you give yourself the permission to
Hmm.
do
Yeah.
it, and just try things out. Like I grew up with a mom that told me to try things out and like told me not to pick a degree when I started
Mm-hmm.
college because she was like, just take some classes and figure out what you like. And I was feeling so much like pressure from society and like the outside world to pick something. And then I had my mom who I'm so close with and am so I respect her so much, telling me not to. And so it was like constantly feeling pulled. And then when I would have this like plan in my head of how things were going to work out, and she always teases me about this, is like if my plan A like doesn't or didn't go the way that I thought it was going to, like the wheels came off. Like I felt like the
Yeah.
world was ending because it's this, you think it's going to happen one way and it doesn't. And it's funny just because even when my mom was in college, she did not pick a degree until she was a junior, and literally she got called to the dean's office and they told her like, you have to stop being undeclared, like you're supposed to graduate next year. And they had laid out all of her credits and they said, these are the where you have the most credit, you need to pick something. And so she ended up getting a business degree because that's what she had the most credits in, but she had so many different interests. And I think that speaks to being multi-passionate, and also like
Mm-hmm.
being multi-passionate is not a bad thing. It actually makes you like a very, I think, well-rounded human
Mm-hmm.
being.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think that like when we allow ourselves to also try things and then being like, I don't think that's really like a good fit for me. Like that's okay too. And that's, how I
Mm-hmm.
experienced with real estate. It was like, I'm gonna try it out. It sounds cool. It's something I've always been interested in. So let's try it out. Let's see how it goes. And it just wasn't like the best fit. So I just changed my
Mm-hmm.
mind. And it's not like something bad needs to happen or you need to feel like you failed. Like it's like, okay, like that wasn't it for me. And
Mm-hmm.
I've always said that at the end of my life, I want to look back and instead of thinking, what if, I want to think like, oh well, oh well, I tried that.
Yeah.
I'd much rather think like, okay, oh well, I tried that, it didn't work out,
Yeah.
versus like, what if I would have tried
Yeah.
that? What
Yeah.
if I would have given that a shot? Because you never know,
Mm-hmm.
like those things could have been the things that ended up being like the thing for you. And I don't
Yeah.
I don't want to live life wondering. I want to
Yeah.
make sure I try things and I figure out, you know, where it all fits.
I
So
love that. I mean, you're already giving advice, but do you have any other advice or thoughts that you would want to share with someone who is in that spot of like, I feel like I might should do this, but I'm not really sure?
mhm. I think like the first step is a lot like do some reflection, ask yourself some questions. It could literally be like a 30-minute journal session. Get like a nice cup of coffee or like a drink, like whatever, whatever that is. An Olipop. I've been super into Olipops lately. Also like lemon water, whatever is delicious for you. Sit down and like spend some time journaling about the thing and asking yourself like, how does this thing align with where I'm at in this season of my life? How does this support the goals that I want for my family, for my life? That's been a big thing for me too, is like when I've had to let go of things because they're things that I want to do. They're things
Mm,
that I so badly want to do and I'm so passionate about, but they do not align with what I want my life to look like. And what I want our family life to look like. And so those are things that I've had to like say no to or say no, not right now to. And so I
mhm.
think just spending time with questions and asking yourself those things and reflecting on that. And then I would say like the next thing is if it all makes sense and it all aligns, I would really just try it. Like
Mhm.
just try it out. And it can be something so simple. It doesn't have to be like this massive shift. You like do a total rebrand and you do, all the kind of things, but it's it's just try it out. Like do something where you can dip your toe in it,
That's good.
and see what it is. Because how do we know? How do we know
Yeah.
if we're going to even like it if we don't try it?
Yeah.
And how do we know um if it's not the right fit if we
Yeah.
don't try it? And
Yeah.
I think that's something that's so important to remember. Like we would never tell, a toddler like not to try different foods because
Right.
they might not they don't think they're going to like it, but like what if they do? And they
Yeah.
have to, they have to try it out. Or even sports, like when you're growing up, like there's people that grow up doing several different sports before they find like the one they really want to focus on. Because they're trying it out. They're seeing what they like. They're seeing what they're good at. They're seeing, where their gifts naturally land. And I think it's the same in entrepreneurship. You have to try some things out, and be okay with trying it out and then being like, it's not for me. And that's okay. And going and trying to figure something else out. It'll come to you. It'll happen naturally. But I think it's important to try.
That's important for me to hear, because I'm like, okay, if I'm going to change, I have to like do the whole thing.
Everything. Yeah. No. And I'm such a like all or nothing person. So it's also advice for myself as well. But it's the same thing with like, we pivoted into the focus of Mom's Day Out Collective and really getting all of that up and going. But I still have your behind the scenes BFF. I'm still here to help people, start their business as a virtual assistant. The course is still there. It's still really great content. So it's not like I just like got rid of it and like am not doing it at all. It's just that the focus has shifted, the priority has shifted in terms of business, and it doesn't have to be so all or nothing all the time.
There's building and maintenance stages of businesses, and you can have multiple businesses and just have them at different stages. You can't like build two things at once, but you could have one in one and one in the other.
Yeah, for sure. And I felt like last year was my building of your behind the scenes BFF, and your Mom's Day Out Collective had to take a back seat while I kind of figured out like, what is this even meant to be? Is it meant to be anything? Is it meant to be the main thing? Like, what is it meant to be? And now that I have the answers to that, I'm able to make that shift and make that the priority and let the other business like take a back seat, take a chill pill for a minute.
Yeah, because it's running by itself. You've done the work to get it up and going. So good. Well, I'm going to link your podcast, your website, all the behind the scenes BFF stuff. Everything will be linked so people can find you. But my last little question is just taking a pivot from our business talk, which has been incredible. And you could tie it in, but what is bringing you peace right now?
Oh man, I think what's bringing me peace right now is just having clarity and having taken time to rest and having taken time to listen to what God's calling is on my life, and spending a lot of time in the Word and spending a lot of time surrounding myself with people that I want to be surrounded with and that kind of elevate that. And I think that has brought me so much peace, like in my personal life, especially like His promises. And I think it's also brought me a lot of peace in business overall. And so it's been a really, I thought 2022 was a big year of growth, having another baby and changing my business and all this thing. But I feel like 2023 has been less action, but has been like the biggest year of growth that I've experienced. Which I think is good. And it's like, it's just setting everything up for 2024. And I can't believe we're like 3 months away, 4 months away, but it's been really cool. It could also be because I'm gonna be 30 next month. So I'm like, I'm gonna be 30. So it's a lot of life changes, a lot of big things. But I feel like that's what's bringing me peace right now.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I feel like what I've been describing as 2023 as is in an internal growth year.
Yes. Oh yeah.
Like in myself, but also in my business. Like we have seen an increase in our business, but it's mainly come from clients we already had.
Yeah.
And not new ones. And that's just been interesting for me to realize.
Yeah.
But like you said too, I think I've been the internal growth and processing and behind the scenes things are setting up
preparing you
for the next external growth year.
And that's something I heard too at that event I went to. And, they said like, if your business were to blow up tomorrow, could you handle it? And I'm like, 6 months ago, no way. I was not in like the mental state to be able to handle that growth. I also didn't have the skills that I was going to need to handle that growth. So as much as you want things to happen overnight or you want things to happen quickly, doesn't work like that. And
No.
if it did, could you handle it? And so I feel
Yeah.
like when you have these seasons of internal growth and you have these seasons of reflection and like slowing down, you're preparing yourself and you're being prepared to
Mm-hmm.
be able to handle it, and that
Mm-hmm.
things are going to come your way and you're going to be able to handle it and take
Mm-hmm.
care of it how it needs to be taken care of.
Absolutely. The little quick TikTok videos that are like, I made, 50K in
Yes.
my first 6 months. It's like, don't pay attention to those.
Yeah,
That's not real
just
life.
don't. It's probably not sustainable,
No, there's
whatever they're
so much
doing.
behind the
And
scenes that you don't see. That's a 5-second
yes,
video. Like,
yes. And it does people a disservice, because not every, even if that's true, even if that's the
mm-hmm,
true statement, I made 50K
mm-hmm,
in my first 6 months. Not everyone has the skills to be able to do
mm-hmm.
that. Not everyone is prepared to be able to do that. And to think that like sales or entrepreneurship or business is just something that like anyone can do, it might be true to an extent, but you have to have a certain skill set. You have to
Yeah.
have you have to be prepared. You have to be
Mm-hmm,
able to know how to handle things. You have to have knowledge and experience.
mm-hmm.
And I think it does a disservice to people to it over glamorizes,
Yeah.
what entrepreneurship can be.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing and I am
Yeah.
so thankful for it, but
Mm-hmm,
I think it does people a disservice
mm-hmm.
to be
Yeah.
sharing stuff like that without sharing all the other stuff too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that this whole conversation has been just a great, like, pull back the curtain. There are seasons
Mm-hmm.
of doubt and shame and processing and less action. And that's like necessary and part of
Mm-hmm.
it and should be like welcomed.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
Thank you, Kate. This has been such a good conversation. And I know that it will be really impactful because a lot of us are probably struggling with this just under the surface. So
Mm-hmm.
thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me.
Yes. All right, guys. Thank you for listening, and we will see you all next week. Thank you so much for joining us for today's episode. Don't forget to connect with us on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook, and we would love it if you would leave a review wherever you're listening. We'll see you next week for more tips for how to become a peaceful entrepreneur.